Hello, hi everyone, and welcome for this PyLadies Hactoberfest. So we are about to start, and I would like to start by saying that we organize this event with PyLadies Paris and PyLadies Global. So I just want to show who presented this with me. So Maria is going to animate this show alongside myself. And we also have Lucy, who helped a lot to get this event together. And behind the scene today, we have Marie-Louise, who's helping us to bring this presentation live to you. And just a word about PyLadies. So PyLadies, we are a global team, and we have chapters all over the world. We have a website that is pyladies.com. And on this website, you can see all of our chapters. Basically, what we want to do is to help women who code with Python to learn Python and meet each other and participate in new projects. We don't only welcome ladies, we also welcome anyone who's happy to work with us and feel good together with us. And also, as we are the PyLadies Paris meetup, I should show you the meetup that we have. So our link is bit.ly/PyLadies Paris meetup. If you want to have a look, we organize events and we'd love to have you with us for our next events too. And just a word about the fact that we have a code of conduct. And basically, the idea is that we want to make sure that the event goes well for everyone and everyone feels safe today. So thank you for respecting this code of conduct. And now, just a word about Hactoberfest. So Hactoberfest is a global event that is organized by Digital Ocean. And the idea of Hactoberfest is to help anyone and maintainers to meet in order to participate in new open source projects. So basically, throughout the whole month of October, we would like to encourage anyone to participate in open source projects, whether you are brand new to open source, where you brand new to developing, or whereas you are already you've been a developer for a long time and you know everything about it and everything about contributing. So there's a website you can have a look if you'd like to get more information about where Hactoberfest comes from. And just a word of thank you to Microsoft, Ladies of Code, and Human Coders. Thanks to them, this event is going to be a great event, and Ladies Code Paris and Human Coders help us really with communications, and Microsoft with the global organization. Now, I would just like to know if you could all say a little hello in the chat, just so that we can start with a nice atmosphere of people getting to know each other. Is one of the objectives of today and of this month of October, that anyone can meet and feel that we are there to help you, and we hope that you're going to learn with us. So say a little hello in the chat, and share your appreciation with the speakers when they give talks, if you like these talks. So if you can say that if you enjoyed them, we really appreciate it. And after any talks, you're welcome to ask questions. So we have 5 minutes of Q&A after all of the talks. So really, really feel free to ask questions in the chat. We are there, we're gonna look at them, and we're going to ask the questions to the speaker, okay? We are on Twitter, so we have 2 Twitter handles for PyLadies Paris and PyLadies Global. And Hactoberfest, as it's a global event, we have a hashtag too, so feel free to use it. And first, a little question. So where are you from? So now we are doing online events, and what I like about online events is now we have people from all over the place. So for example, I'm from Paris, and some of the people here with me today are from the USA, or they are from London, or they are from another city in France. We are now doing a global event, and I'd love to know where you're coming from. So a word about our organization. So today we are kicking off the event. So the idea is that we can help you get started with your projects. Then we'd really like you to join the Slack that we have. It's bit.ly/Hacktober Slack. On this Slack, we'll be there to help you with starting your projects. And then it's going to be about contributing to projects. Okay. Our guest speakers today, we have Johan from Microsoft. We have Chiara from the INRIA. We have Laila from Bureau à Partager and Jennifer from Microsoft as well. And we also have 3 maintainers. So some of them are here live today with us. So we have Bartos from CNORS. He's going to be live with us. And Mariana and Emmanuel, they have sent us some videos that we're going to play. And all of them will be on Slack. So they'll be there to help you with your projects. Mariana is from QuantStack and Emmanuel from Saint-Gobain. Just a word about our agenda. So now is the introduction, and then we will start with the first talk, which is why contribute to open source. After this, we are going to see together how open source is linked to open research, and will help you understand how to make your first contribution. So it's really going to be a step-by-step demo on how you can make your very first contribution. Then we'll see what to look for in a project to contribute to. And we'll then show 3 different projects that you can participate. We have the project maintainers with us. So we want to make sure that you feel like you can really participate to them. And our 3 maintainers are going to be here throughout the month of October to have a look at what you did with this project. Okay, and then Maria is going to help you find some other Hactoberfest issues. So thank you. And so this was the introduction, and we're going to continue with Johan, who is going to give you a talk on participating in an open source project. So we will be switching to Johan's video, and we will be listening to Johan presenting his talk in a second.
Hi everyone, thanks Maud for this introduction, and thanks you for inviting me today. It's my first time at a PyLadies meetup, and I'm really happy and honored to be opening the talks today. So my name is Johan, and I'm working as a cloud advocate at Microsoft. I start with a talk about a subject that I've been always interested into, especially since it's the first day of Hactoberfest. I'm pretty sure many of you have already asked themselves this question: why contribute to open source? First, before diving into this subject, I like to clarify everything I'm talking about. The first thing is answering that question: what's open source software? So if anyone has an idea of a quick definition, just drop in the chat. I don't know if we have too many delays, but I'm also looking at the chat right now, so you can just ask me questions during the talk, and I will take a look during the speech. So when I was searching for this definition, as always, I took a look at Wikipedia and tried to get a summary of the main concept here. So when we're talking about open source, what we came from is that open source software is a software whose source code is released under license, which grants anyone the right to inspect, modify, and distribute it for any purpose. And in this definition, there's mainly 2 major points here, in my opinion. The first one is that you get access to the source code of the application, and the second one is the license. We'll be talking a bit more about that later, but basically what you should retain from that definition is that open source software is a software where you have the freedom to look into the source code, make your own modification, and redistribute this software. You probably maybe heard a few years ago, we were not talking mostly about open source, but you may have heard about free software. So I will just try to start with debunking a confusion that may happen there. Open source doesn't mean free as in free beer. You can there are open source software that can be commercial. You can sell it for money. You can also integrate some parts of open source project or open source project in completely in, and also derive work and make it proprietary if needed, depending on the license. We'll talk a bit about that later. But there was always, when we were talking about free software, this confusion about open source being free. And I want to just get the focus that open source, as it said, is mostly about the source code. And we get that clarification thanks to this wonderful woman named Christine Peterson. And she was basically the one that has, a few years ago, rebranded what was called free software into open source and make it a more clear definition and also more open to everyone to dive into. So the second important part of open source is the licenses. It's a subject that you must at least get a bit of knowledge into if you're trying to contribute to open source projects, because it's very important to know what kind of license the project you're trying to contribute to is under. So there are a lot of popular open source licenses, but basically they fall into one of these two categories mostly. You can find the permissive licenses. The most popular one these days is called the MIT license. There are a few other ones which give basically different rights and restrictions also. And there are also copyleft licenses. Before diving into the difference between those two, if you know basically what's the difference, what's the main points of copyleft licenses, I want you to just put a description in the chat. I will take a look at it before just explaining it. So basically, if you're looking at a license, it's something that grants you a set of rights, but also a set of restrictions over the source code of an application. So that's something you really want to get a look into before diving into a project, since if you're going to be a contributor to an open source project, every line of code that you will push to this project will fall under the license of this project. So that means you're giving up some rights to the owner of this project, and you also have to respect a few of these restrictions. So that's very important. So coming back to the licenses, all the licenses that falls into the category of permissive licenses, like the MIT license, basically gives you the right to do almost anything you want with the project. Basically, you can include some parts of the source code into your application and redistribute it into a different project as long as you keep the original license for the source code you included. You can include it in proprietary softwares if you want to build your own enterprise application over some of these projects. And it's not mandatory to redistribute your changes to this project, even though it's encouraged also. And that's where comes the main differences with the copyleft licenses. You may have heard of the GPL license, which is one of the most well-known copyleft license. Basically, all these copyleft licenses comes with a strong restriction that if you want to include some parts of this project into your own project, and that's the case for the GPL, all your source code from your own project automatically becomes GPL. That means that you must release the source code for this project if you include parts of a GPL project. And basically, that means that the license is viral. Your source code gets contaminated by this project. So it's great because if you want to ensure that you're building something and you don't want that some people steal your work and build some improvements over it and don't release these improvements, the GPL license prevents people from doing that. So it's great in the sense, but it's also a great constraint. For example, if you want to just reuse some parts of an open source project under GPL, that also means that if you're planning to make a commercial project on it, you also have to release all your source code even the one that were completely new and that were not parts of the original open source project. So that can be too much of a constraint for some kind of enterprise. So that's an important distinction to know. So now coming back to the main subject, why contribute to open source? I will start with this. I'm sure you already know a lot of open source software every day, even without you're not aware of. There's open source software driving your operating system on your laptop, on your smartphone. There's open source software and libraries in your TV, in your car, in your fridge, basically everywhere. And that's also important because if you are working for a company, maybe you're a developer, you're working for a software company, that also means that you're going to earn money thanks partly to open source. Because if you're a developer, that's like part of our daily routine. If you were asked to implement a new feature in your software, probably that one of your first reflex is take a look at existing packages and take a look also at the license to see if it's compatible with the project and what you want to do. And maybe to get faster implementing that feature, you'll reuse some existing libraries, some of existing packages or code from open source projects. It's also very important because that's open source. That was one of the main reasons that the startup ecosystem could really rise since the years 2000 because of all these open source projects. Just started to pop up from everywhere, and that's what allows basically quick software development, and that allows startup to get created and have very fast time to market with their software. Because before open source, if you take the opposite of open source, it's like using proprietary software or software that you have to pay license for using it in projects. That's one of the things that may prevent startups from rising or from emerging, because prior to these popular open source years, you had to, if you were wanting to implement a feature, maybe, I don't know, having a chart library to just draw some charts in your application, you had to look at proprietary software. You don't know what's behind, you don't know the performance of it. If there's a feature that's not in there, you cannot add it. But and you still had to pay for using it in your software. Basically, you don't have the freedom to do what you wanted with it. And the alternative was to rewrite everything from scratch. That's where open source really comes handy, because you have the possibility to modify the software to your needs. You can contribute back your changes to the project to make it live and over years. And it allows you to develop software really faster. I've mostly talked about software, but open source is also a culture that serves as a pillar to many domains, and that opens also a lot of doors. We have a talk just after that about open research. There's also, you've probably heard that the past years there was a lot of boom in the AI and machine learning communities. It's also part thanks to the open data communities that provide data sets, so it's really easier to train new models and all this to build all these AI projects. There's also a lot of communities around the open cloud platforms and services. A lot of our governments right now runs an open source project and start to have open data policies and are basically opening every of the inner working. There's also a lot of open hardware projects. For example, I love 3D printing, and thanks to the communities and to the open hardware community, I have printed a lot of parts that really help me building some pretty useless stuff for my home, but anyway, it's fun. And also, it's also not limited to useful stuff, I should say, but also in the artistic side. I'm like a music composer myself, and I also look a lot at open music projects. There's also like open synth community, but basically every field has this open source counterpart culture that's really helping driving it. And then comes the very important question, is that why you as an individual should contribute to this project. And that's basically the main point of this talk. So first, we all have heard that okay, you mostly went into open source because of your passion, because you like sharing with others, because you like developing in your free time, and you like spending all the weekends closing issues on GitHub, or maybe not. Because for me, of course, when I started, I was kind of passionate about making open source projects, but to be honest, it's not passion that's that drives you for maintaining open source projects over many years and keeping contributing to this project. It's not at least the only one reason. One of the most important reasons, in my opinion, is that it's really an excellent way to learn new skills. It's also to improve your existing skills, also learning new technology, new programming language, to learn also to improve your soft skills, not only your hard skills. It's an excellent way to train you to collaborate with others, especially remotely through GitHub and things like that. I always love when I start to learn a new language to dig into project I like and get a look at the source code to see the best practices, to see how people build this project. And then trying to contribute is an excellent way also to dive yourself into the language, to the technologies you want to learn, and get better at it. Another good point, it's a really nice way to build your own network, to meet people that shares your values, have the same interest as you have. And also, I should add that maybe it's also a good way to find, at least it may help you to find your next job. It can help you also with interviews. From my very own personal experience, I can say that my current job, and I know also that my previous job, I was hired partly because I was involved in many open source projects. And I know a few friends that for them it went also this way. I have this example of a very good friend of mine that was hired by Microsoft without even having to pass a single technical interview. You might wonder why. It's because he was maintaining that .NET project for over years, and basically the people interviewing him just saw his GitHub. They did through his source code and just said that, okay, we don't have to make you pass a technical interview because we just know from your source code, we can see your skills, we can see how you code, and basically that speaks for you. So that can be also a facilitator for finding jobs and passing interview. And most important, you should definitely seek to have fun when contributing to open source. It's not something you should see as a chore. You should do it because you want to have some fun and exchange with people and learn new things. And that's one of the main reasons I stick with open source personally. As you know, if you're a developer, if you're working in software projects, sure, you have to communicate with machines, you have to produce code, but in my opinion, development is all about communicating with people, because you don't only speak to the machine, you spend most of the time exchanging with other developers, getting feedback from users, updating the status of your feature with your PM, and basically you spend your time communicating with every person involved in your project. And that's only for what I call the first circle of communication for the project, because there are others. Probably if you're working in a company, you have exchanges with developers from other projects, from other teams, to share best practices, to have some feedbacks. And it's also important to get feedback from people outside of your close circle to avoid the echo chamber effect. That basically means that you only get positive feedback from people close to you because you have the same habits, because of the proximity. So it's a good way to challenge yourself. And outside of your company, it's also a good way to take part in communities. For example, this meetup is part of the PyLadies communities, which is in itself part of the bigger Python communities. So you can always try to find some subject of common interest and communities you can participate into, including open source, but not only. Speaking about projects, open source projects, and in meetups also speaking about with your coworkers is also some form of contribution to them. And finally, contributing to open source gives visibility to your profile. Of course, it's not something mandatory you have to do if you want to have a development career, but definitely it's like a plus. It gives you like a portfolio of source code to show to people. It's like you can show your technical skills to recruiters, and I already know a lot of recruiters that just the first thing they do when they scan a profile for a job is that taking a look at the GitHub project, the GitHub profile of a person before having interview with them. So it can really like a facilitator to learn new jobs. So hopefully that gives you some hints on why it can be a good idea to get interested into contributing to open source. I also would like to say that I mostly spoke of code during during this talk, but there are very many different ways to help, and it's not very often. It's not only about just pushing PR with new feature or fixing bugs or basically contributing code. Promoting the project, helping with curating the backlog, fixing and updating the docs is also very important. Writing tutorials. Translation are something that is really seek after. If you can help translating projects in your native language, that's really helpful to open source projects. Reporting bugs also is a good form of contribution because we are not always aware as maintainers that something's wrong in the project. Helping writing tests also because it's something that's always lacking most often in open source projects. And if you have some creative skills, you can always help make like, for example, a new logo, or videos and jingle or anything. Basically, you can have ideas. You can help in many ways open source projects. And I think I won't step further into that subject because I know that we have a wonderful talk by Leila that's coming after that will guide you through making your own contribution. So that's the end for this talk. So thank you for listening to me. If you have any question, just don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Or if you have some question later, you can always find me on Twitter. My messages are open, and don't hesitate. Thank you again.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chiara, so I think it's my turn now, and I'm starting sharing my screen, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. Yeah, we can see my screen. Okay, good morning, everybody. Again, I'm the Community and Operation Officer of the Scikit-Learn INRIA Consortium. So I'm talking today about open source to open research. Why? Because my background is in research, so I will talk about something that I know a little bit. So the first thing that we have to define is what is open source software, and I think that Johan already did a very nice work on that. So I will just let you read some of the principal point about that. So the license implies source code sharing, and the important thing is that users are free to read the code, modify it, and redistribute it. that does not mean that open source software is for free. As Johan already said, there is a lot of hidden cost in maintaining and distributing open source software. What is open research? Open research is something built about the reproducibility and the accessibility of the results and the data used to obtain those scientific results. So to have an open research, we need open data, accessible, searchable, reusable, open tools. In particular, today we are talking about software tools. So we talk about reusable tools and open source tools, obviously. And at the end of this path, we want that papers written with our research be open access for everybody. And again, that does not mean that open research is for free, because even if you can access openly all the results, the result of this research, somewhere someone is working for you to make this result available and always accessible. So the question is, what open source software and open research have in common? Okay, there is a long story about that, because yes, open source is a tool for open research, but open source was born in a research environment. This is the case, for example, for the very first, I think, open source tool is the World Wide Web that was born at CERN in the end of the 80s, I think in 89. The GNU operating system was born at the MIT. Richard Stallman started working on it in the middle of the 80s. Linus Torvalds started to work on Linux during his studies at the Helsinki University. Python, because today we are talking about Python mainly. Python was Guido van Rossum started to work on Python at the beginning of the 90s during his job in a Center for Research in Computer Sciences in the Netherlands. NumPy is our very big star in those days, and it was, again, NumPy is a project born in 2005, and Travis Oliphant, one of the authors, was working as an assistant professor at a university in the United States. And obviously, I'm working for Scikit-learn today, and as someone here probably knows, Scikit-learn was the project was started in 2007 as a Google Summer of Code, and at 2010 the first release was out, thanks to a nice job of a bunch of people working at INRIA. So during the PhD thesis and postdoc and some first job in the research. So that's why we talk today about open source and open research. Research makes extensive use of open source software. The essential reason is that source code availability is a key to the reproducibility of scientific results. But sometimes, for bad reasons, research makes use of open source software because open source is available at a lower cost with respect to other proprietary software. Again, this is not really true. People using open source software often forget about the fact that maintenance costs are hidden. There is plenty of people working on this software and making a really good job, but on a volunteer basis. The last reason to talk about open research today is that research environment is for a lot of people is the first time when they start to use open source tools. This is my case. For example, I started to code and use open source software during my PhD and then my postdoc, and that's why I'm today. I have joined the scikit-learn team, and for people, I don't know exactly how many people today are still still at university or studying somewhere during training. So this is research is a very big opportunity to contribute to open source software. The questions you are confronted to every day during research are, for example, it's a good idea to use a general tool to process my data and to obtain my results, or do I have to recode everything from the beginning? Well, in general, it's a good solution to choose something already existing, because this tool already has more users, so it has been tested, and a lot of bug reports have already been done, and a lot of bugs have probably been fixed. Now, if you decided, okay, so I will use something that everybody can use and everybody can contribute to, maybe it's a good idea to contribute myself to this tool, because someone decided to make me a gift, and in some way I have to give something back to this person. The idea is that open source allows you to lower costs, not buying expensive licenses. In exchange, you can contribute and help the maintenance and help the community to better use this tool. As Johan already said, obviously using open source software allows you to check the tool, to investigate the tool and better understand how it works, because you have the source code available, and so you can increase your technical skills in this situation. You have the opportunity to increase your technical skills. I've linked here a very nice blog post of working randomly. Well, I will make the link available, the link to my presentation available for the participants. But I really recommend you to read those the suggestions and the idea that academic could really benefit of using Git and GitHub specifically as the base of the entire open source ecosystem. So open source and open research. A happy relationship. We have seen in research a lot of examples of very good situation where nice discoveries has been done thanks to the use of open source software. In particular, the most impressive in the last year was the image, the reconstruction of the first event horizon of the first black hole. Sorry, the first reconstruction of a black hole using radio telescopes and other kind of observations. But another very interesting example is the legacy survey of space and time pipeline, because if you go to their GitHub page, they have a pipeline entire 100% written in Python. So research is really embracing Python as a very useful language, because Python is particularly helpful in prototyping and in pipelining the data processing. The Pangea community is another example. Those people are working in geoscience and pushing to create a big data and open source and open tools environment in geoscience. And obviously, well, I'm personally involved in this, so I'm very happy to say that scikit-learn is a very nice example of open source born in research and successfully performing in the research world and in the commercial world too. But all is this relation has sometimes some trouble. That's normal. If you worked in the research, some people can tell you that open source is not worth to work with because it's not worth to write tools for other people, because you just have to work for you and be the first author of your papers, and sometimes just writing software is not good for your paper publication. Sometimes the issue is with some you work with some specific data, and at the first sight the tool is not general enough to work with your specific case, or sometimes the very easy say is, oh, okay, no, don't use this. This tool is too buggy, and we try to contact the author, but nobody is answering. So we just decide to do something on our side. This is still present in current research, but things are changing. And an increasing number of journals are dedicated to some scientific computation and code. So now, if you are an open source author, you can publish and be the first author of your paper and say, okay, this is new, because starting from now, we can process our data in a general way, and this software is done for that. Papers about reusable software have a lot of citations, because if your software is well written, well packaged, and open, it will be used by a lot of users, and all those people writing new papers with new data will cite you. Will cite the paper that you wrote about your tool. Another thing changing is that open access to data and tools is increasingly required by funding agencies. And that's fair, because they are providing you the funding to move forward on your research. And so they are asking you to publish and to put to make your data and your tools available for other people. And this is the way research could move forward in an efficient way. And this is quite new. France started to do this. I'm not sure about other countries, but public institutions have started encouraging employers to use and contribute to open source software. So why there are still some difficulties in building trust between open source and some old and some old researcher, let's say. This is because the principle of the open source software is this software is provided as is. As Johan said, there are a lot of open source licenses with different clauses and different behaviors, but all those licenses start with this sentence, and this sentence is very important because it states that the person working on the tool is doing that as a gift. This person probably will not answer to all your questions because maybe this person will not have the time to do that. He's a volunteer, or she is a volunteer working on that. And this is important to keep open source free of any constraint, but it could be a point of it could be a difficult when big institutions, agencies, or business people come to you asking for something, working in a week, working in 2 days, because they need to put a tool in production. So that's why sustainability is becoming a big issue in open source software. People working in open source software need to be helped and sustained in their work, not only by a community, even if the community is a really important part. Let's say the community is the essential part. Without coders, we will not have any open source software, any gift, but they will not be here forever, because they will probably change their objective. They will have a family one day, and they want to say at some point, okay, I've done my job, and now I want to leave and to be sure that my work is not lost and that someone else will take care of it. And I think that the foundation model is a very nice model to provide sustainability and support to open source projects. A foundation will fund the project without taking away its freedom, and will make open source software a public good. There are a lot of examples of foundation. The obvious example here is the Linux Foundation and the Python Software Foundation. They are doing a very nice job in providing grants, help, and infrastructure to open source developers. So let me do a bit of advertising. Obviously, I'm working for the Scikit-learn Consortium, so let me say that we are starting to build something to sustain and support Scikit-learn, employing central contributors to the project, supporting the Scikit-learn community, and we hope spotting and promoting new key contributors. So let's say that if someone is interested in contribute to Scikit-learn in a continuous way, the consortium is happy to receive spontaneous application. So I'm finished. I will thank you, the organization, for inviting me. This is the email address to which you can write if you are interested in our activities. And if you have any question, I will be happy to answer them.
Hello, sorry, Laila, just interrupting for a minute. Actually, your microphone is on mute, so we can't hear what you're saying. If you can just unmute, yeah, perfect.
Redo it again. So I'm Leila. Sorry for the muted microphone. I'm the co-organizer of Ladies of Code Paris. I've been coding since 2004, and I've used GitHub during my studies. And I just love this tool. Like, I think it's an essential tool when you're contributing to open source project, but also just when you're coding on your project. It's a great way to manage your software. And you can reach me on Twitter. I'm Ladies Paris. And if you have any questions during this talk, I will be on the YouTube chat after. Sorry again for the sound. So, what's Git? So Git is a version control system. It's a tool that is very useful to keep track on the changes you made on your project. Like, for example, I'm just going to show quickly on the Git project I'm going to do the demo on. So it's the Ladies of Code website. And so here I'm on my terminal, and I can see, like, for example, with the command git log, I can see all the changes I've made on the project, basically. So Git is awesome just by itself. But the thing is, if my computer is on fire right now, if I'm just using Git, I've lost all my modifications because my project was only on my computer. And that's how GitHub is awesome. It's a Git repository hosting service. And basically, you can push your Git project on GitHub. And so that if your computer is on fire, that's okay, because everything is on GitHub. So you didn't lose anything as soon as you have, of course, saved all your work. I will speak a lot about GitHub today because that's the tool I use and I love for now. But of course, there are other solutions available on the market. There's GitLab, Bitbucket. It's just that I don't use them personally, but I'm pretty sure that all what I'm going to talk about today, you will be able to find the same features on GitLab and Bitbucket. So it's show time. Talk, talk, talk. I'm going to take my notes. So I'm going to show you around my utilization of GitHub, basically. So you can create your own account on GitHub, and you can explore projects. Like, for example, I know that I use it a lot to just pin projects that I find very interesting. So, for example, I started the repository of Caroline Stransky because I think her CV is very cool. There were also this repository I was interested in. So you can really explore. There are a lot of repositories available on GitHub. And I think it's a great tool just to, as a bookmark, it's pretty convenient too. You can also create your own project. So every time when I try a new tech, for example, I've tested to host an app on Vercel. And I did a small project for that. So just when you learn coding, I think it's a great way to, as Johan said earlier, just to showcase your work and, show your project to the world, basically. So that's for the profile point. So for the demo, I'm gonna show you an example on the Ladies of Code website. So the Ladies of Code website is really simple. It's just a landing page on what we're doing and some backlinks on the companies that support us and also the communities that we like. And oh my God, what do I see? PyLadies is not here. So that's a shame. And we should remediate to it. So I've created an issue yesterday to add PyLadies to our community friends. And how did I do that? Well, one of the cool things on GitHub is that there's a label called Good First Issue. So if you're curious about an open source project, even if it's not the Ladies of Code one, it's it's a common use on GitHub. You can spot with the label good first issue all the issues that are good for you if it's the first time that you're contributing to an open source project. So the issues is basically the page where you can see all the problems that occur on the repository and like all the help that is needed. So I'm gonna just take this example here and show you quickly how I'm gonna fix this issue. So first you have to get the project, of course, and you can fork the project by clicking here. So forking is basically like doing a copy of the project. So that, because generally you are not the owner in the repository and you cannot submit a pull request immediately, you cannot change the code immediately. It's really also more convenient for you to just get a copy on the project, work on your issue, and then submit a pull request once you're sure it's working. So you have this awesome animation. That's why I love also GitHub. I think that the UX is really cool and they improved in the last years. It's, I'm sorry, I love GitHub. So I've forked the project and now I should be ready to work on it. And of course I cheated for the demo purposes to be more fast. I already have it on my computer. So right now I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna read the README, and it teaches you how to start the project locally. And it's the first thing you have to do after you have forked a project. You will have to make sure that it's working on your computer before trying to do anything, because so that you can be sure that it's not your code that is a problem. So just to speed up the demo, I've done already the things that was necessary. So I have my folder, my node modules that are already installed. So I'm just going to start the project, make sure it works. And voila, I have my copy of the website. And I'm going to start working on the issue that was adding the logo of PyLadies here. And just to speed up a little bit, I think I have a stash. So as I said, I'm using Git locally to maintain all the modifications that I'm doing on the website. So yesterday I prepared the addition of the logo, and list. So this command shows you all the work that you have saved on another part of your computer. So I'm just going to quickly, I'm just going to lower maybe the screen. And voila, I have my, my logo here. So my code is ready to be sent to my project. I'm just going to lower a bit the font size up. I hope you can still see that way. Okay, now we're better. So I have changed. Git status is a command that tells me, okay, that's what you've changed on the project. It's just giving you the state of your project. And right now, when I will submit my modifications to the maintainer of the repository, I will create what we call a new branch. So I'm going to call it add logo PyLadies. Sometimes they may have specifications on how you name your branch, but usually it's explained on the README. So you really have to read carefully the README just to make sure on what the repository maintainer prefers in terms of naming. So, because like, for example, sometimes they like having the issue number, like for it to be just to link pull request and issues and making sure everything is okay. So I have my change here. I've created my branch with this command, git checkout -b at PyLadies logo. And right now I'm going to do a git status again because that's a talk I'm always doing that, just to check my working tree status. And I'm going to add the file that I want to send for my pull request. So here, I don't know if you noticed, earlier it was telling me that I was on branch master. And after I've created add logo PyLadies, now I am on the right branch. So that's the Git magic. And so I've added all my files. I could have done git add point. I don't really like doing that because this command adds everything that is on your working tree. And sometimes, you might have stuff that is unrelated on the folder and stuff like that. So I like to do it file by file or like with shortcuts like this, just to make sure everything is under control. So I'm going to do a git status again just to double check what I've sent. So now it's telling me changes to be committed. So I've added the files, but they are not yet committed. So what's a commit? It's a modification that you're ready to send. So usually you commit stuff you commit code that is functional, but it depends on people, but it's generally a good practice to commit something that is functional and that can be pushed in at least in a test environment. So I'm ready to commit. So I'm going to use the command git commit -m, and I'm going to add a commit message. Generally, you try to explain what you're doing in your commit. So like, for example, I could say add PyLadies logo, because that's what I'm doing in my modification. Path. So it's telling me, okay, 4 files changed, insertion, deletion, blah, blah, blah. And if I check my working tree, so all the modification I have, I have nothing to commit, working tree is clean. And if I see my Git log, so the history of the modification, I can see here, add PyLadies logo. So I'm happy. The problem is here, my commit is not here, is not on GitHub. And of course, it's not on GitHub since I didn't, right now, my branch is just on my computer. If my computer if my computer is broken, if someone enters the room and breaks my computer, I've lost everything. So what I'm going to do is push my branch. So I'm going to use the command git push origin with my new branch. And that's how my branch will be pushed to GitHub. So Git and GitHub are so well done that it's even giving me URLs to go and create a pull request immediately. So what's a pull request? For those of you who don't know, it's basically a way to say, hey, I have this code that is working. Would you like to merge it? And generally what you do, so you explain here, you have the title of the pull request. So you explain, hey, no, you don't say hey. You refer to the issue, like for example, I have too many tabs. Well, not so many, but I'm just lost in the few I have. So you can refer to the issue, explain a bit what you're doing, and generally the maintainers have how do you say that, a template, and they prefill this area is prefilled with all what you have to say about your changes. And so here I can add PyLadies logo, issued, blah, blah, blah. Reviewers, well, I can ask some people to review, the maintainers of the repository to review my PR. Generally, there are labels. No. If it's not ready yet, you can use the feature create draft pull request to say that, hey, I'm not ready, but I need feedbacks, or if you want to try running all the tests that might be associated with the project and stuff like that, you can open a draft pull request, and so you just have to click on this. This is one of the cool features I was talking about that GitHub did, I think, last year or 3 years ago. And but now, let's say I'm ready. It's beautiful, so I'm gonna click on Create Pull Request. And voila, I did my first contribution on GitHub. I'm just gonna check if I missed something. I didn't speak about conflicts. So with the branch, the issue with the branch is that sometimes, well, of course, there are always several people who are working on the same project as you. And sometimes people might be changing the same file as you, and then you have to handle what we call conflicts. And I'm just gonna try to trigger one. So what did I change? What file did I change? I changed, well, let's change index.html, and let's add something at the line 106. So app, index. I'm gonna commit directly to master. It's a bad thing, but it's just for the demo purposes. So up, I'm gonna add something that's gonna trigger a conflict for my pull request. Path, I'm committing. Okay, so my commit is here. And I should have a conflict path here. So sometimes you might be in this situation, and what you have to do is what we call merging or rebasing. I'm not going to go deeper in these details. I have great resources to explain you what's the difference between a rebase and a merge. But basically, you have to pull the branch master on your local branch. No, sorry, I was not up to date. Pourquoi il me dit ça? And what you have to say here is resolving it manually. Alors, I did it on the main website. I should have done it here. Up. Tac, tac. Tac, 106. Up. Sorry about that. And now I should get a conflict path. So I took the branch master. It's telling me I have a conflict. So what I have to do is going to app.html and try to resolve it. So I'm going to open VS Code, and Git's going to tell you, alors, line 106. Yes, Git is a great guy. It's going to tell you, this is what you have on your local branch, and this is what I got from master. Which change do you want to keep? And me, I want to keep mine. So I'm going to get rid of this and get rid of the head it added. And that was a conflict that was very easy to resolve. But those you might come into, it might be more complicated. So just so you know, you can always abort a merge. If you're not sure of what you're doing, you can just type git merge abort or git rebase abort according to if you're merging or rebasing. And it's a great way to just cancel everything and resolving the conflict once you have someone ready to help you, if it's too complicated. But this one was easy to resolve, and I'm just going to do git up to mark that I've resolved my conflict. So Git always tells you what to do. That's one of the great things too about Git. And now, once I'm ready, I'm just going to commit, and with this message, because it shows that I've did a merge from master on my branch. Oops, I'm taking a lot of time, sorry. But I'm done. And I can push after my branch, and it will be okay to merge and to be accepted by the open source maintainer. Where am I? Path. And that's a cool thing also when you mention the issue link on your PR. There's a nice pull request. There's a nice link to the pull request so that everything is connected. I think that's all I had to say. So I forgot to talk about Squash, but I think I will miss time. But you can also you can see that in the resources I will give you. Just so you know, you don't have to always use the terminal. I think it's just convenient for me because I got used to it and it's more convenient to me. That's a tool that I like. But I can understand that as a beginner, you might be afraid to use the terminal. So just so you know, there's Source3 that is a nice tool that does exactly the same thing I've did, and also GitHub Desktop that I'm actually using here just to review my code. But you have the same features. You can publish branch and through a UI, so it's less frightening, I guess. And yeah, to go deeper, there's Kenzie Dodds, the people of JavaScript know him. He tells it's a 1 hour and a half on how to use Git and GitHub. So he go way deeper than me today and with a way better English. So if you want to check that, it's awesome. There's a list also of open source projects you can contribute to. So it's very cool because I'm a PHP developer and there's project for everyone. And there's also the name of the label that are good for you as a beginner, because some maintainers use Help Wanted or Easy, or not all of them use Good First Issue. But that's a very cool repository that lists all the repositories that need help and that are cool for beginners. So really check this out if you're motivated to contribute. And thanks, I'm done. And I'll see you on the YouTube chat. Thank you.
Hi, if you want to just take down the shared screen, because I'm going to talk a little bit. Hi, so I'm Jennifer Davis. I work at Microsoft as an open source advocate. I've been doing open source for a few years now. And so I wanted today to share some tips and tricks on how you can effectively use your time finding right projects by sort of using some of these processes and tools that I'm going to talk about filtering out some projects to find what will bring you happiness, because open source brings me a lot of happiness, which is why I do it as a job. So the first thing I want you to think about when you're choosing an open source project is your motivation. We all have different motivations for doing things, and also why you want to contribute. So the first question to ask yourself is, not what do I contribute to, but who do I want to work with? Because as was previously mentioned, development and all the work that we do is about communication and collaboration. And so the key is finding people you want to work with. So if you don't know who you want to work with, it might be helpful to projects where you can see quality collaboration happening. Some of the bigger foundations, organizations that do some of the PHP, CNCF, the Linux Foundation, these projects, they have long-term communities and processes that allow people to collaborate more. So that might be the first step to think about. What projects do you want to look at? The second thing to think about is, how long are you thinking about collaborating for any particular project? Is this like, oh, I'm interested in this and I just want to quickly stop in, do a little help, I see a problem here? Or is this something where you want to build a longer term relationship with? The third thing to think about is your company using open source? So you might be able to get paid at the same time while you're exploring contributing to open source for the first time. Again, that might be something where you don't want to do it because you want to actually get credit, or you don't want to go through any sort of long processes, but it's something that you should think about, because I'm all about people getting paid for doing this work, because open source is work. And the final sort of context in terms of thinking about motivation I want people to think about is, do you want to learn new skills? Are you wanting to expand your languages, like what languages you can write in or test in? Do you want to work on your testing knowledge? Or do you want to share your design skills? Do you want to help with documentation? Or are you interested in learning about how to do proper governance of an open source project and how to make it a lifelong sustainable project throughout the life of that project, versus just something that if one maintainer leaves, the project is gone? So if you want to go ahead and bring up my screen, that'll be awesome. So when I think about the different ways that you can find projects, there's all the ways that are on Hactoberfest and like different projects. You can also go to GitHub and you can explore the particular language you care about. Or if you know the foundation where it's like, I don't know of a particular project, but I can find particular projects, and you can just use that to discover projects that you might be interested in contributing to. So that's the first step. And then thinking about how to narrow that down, you think, okay, do I want a small project where my contributions will have a bigger impact? Or do I want a larger project that might have all of the sort of problem areas figured out? Like, there's definitely going to be a code of conduct, right? You want to work on projects that have code of conduct, so you know that the way that people talk to each other is going to be a valuable and learning process versus dealing with some of the harassment. And then second, do you know that there's a well-placed way of thinking through how you contribute? So smaller projects, you can have a bigger impact, but sometimes if you don't know the maintainers, it can be harder to get involved there. And there can be a lot more processes that are not talked about. So when I look at, this is just one example, the typical topics that show up for Python, it's sorted via best match. And so you can choose this to actually get a little bit more clarity about what projects might be useful. So most stars is going to tell you people that are that have found a project and that have found it interesting. Fewest stars is going to be more of those smaller projects that have interest, people care about it, but maybe not as well known. Most forks is most people want to contribute. Now this might be a little confusing because it might be that people forked it to bring to make edits and then send it back to the main repository, but it also might be that it's a sign that the project isn't as active. Recently updated is really useful to me because I think of it as that is where there's activity and I know people are contributing to things. Now it can be a little overwhelming because there is a lot of different projects that are in use, and it might just be somebody's homework project or coding interview that they're working on. So that's kind of a first scan of finding projects. But okay, so you find a project, you go through the awesome beginners, and you realize here is a project that I want to try looking at. So I have picked up one from an earlier speaker so that I could go through it. Now, this is not my real GitHub, so it's a little weird. I'm logged in as my test user, so it's going to look a little different, but I wanted to more closely represent what some of you might be experiencing if you haven't done a lot of open source or use GitHub. So this is an account that does not had a lot of activity at all. And so scikit-learn was mentioned earlier. And so the things that I look at, so imagine I've just clicked on this project and I actually just did click on it earlier today. I did look at it a little bit. The first thing I'm going to look is, do they have badges? Badges are sort of seen as oh, that's not really useful. But to me, it's useful from a point of view of, do they care enough about these different topics to add them? And so that I can see at a quick glance what's going on. So yeah, they have badges. They're mostly green. That tells me there's activity here. There is an error. So something's going on with one of the builds. It shows me what Python versions, PyPackage. It looks like they're using Circle CI for their CI pipeline. So they care about CI. That's awesome. So the other thing I'm going to look at, and this is a live, this is not a recording here, is I'm going to look for the one-liner. And I'm going to see, does this one-liner tell me what this project is about? Can I get some ideas? Am I interested in machine learning in Python? That's pretty cool. So I'm going to keep looking. It's got a link to our URL that I can go browse to see if there's more documentation. They've got a README, and then they've got this license. Now, this is almost the number one, if not the number two thing that I look for. Knowing that I am using an OSI compliant license, that the project is using an OSI compliant license, tells me a lot about that project. If there is no license, you probably shouldn't even consider contributing to it. The reason is if there's no license on the project, that is telling you that that project by default should be considered all rights reserved. So other people can't use it. You can't use it. You can contribute to it, but that's not valuable. You're giving away your work, and it's not helpful to you at all. And it's not helpful to the community. And so look for these OSI approved licenses. There's a whole website about the open source initiative that can help you understand more about this. But that's pretty much the highest level thing I even look for, because I want to make sure that one, I'm helping the community, and two, that I can actually use what I am contributing back. The next thing I can see is, okay, this is a very active project. It's used by a lot of people, and there's a lot of contributors. So this is a big project. If I want to contribute to this, that's super useful if that's the style that I care about. Okay, it's mostly Python. This is kind of a me thing, but I look for a logo on the README. And the reason is this is yet another signal to me that contributions are valued in more than just code. Now, I'm not saying that code is not important. It totally is important. But recognizing that other contributions are valued tells me that any kind of contribution that I can make that I feel is valuable use of my time is going to get more consideration than if it's just oh, this is somebody's little project where they haven't thought through all the different ways people can contribute. The next thing I look is at the README. What kind of information are they giving me? Are they telling me how it's installed? Is there a change log? Is there a way to contribute? There's a contributing guide. I'm going to look for all the different things that I care about. I'm going to look for how do you submit a pull request. It's not that I want a project to tell me how to do GET. I want to know what the process is for submitting to their environment, because people have so many different ideas about it. I also want to understand, is there a way to communicate with folks? Is there community channels? Is there a way to discuss what projects there are? If I'm really excited about a project and all of these things check off, I will also snoop on the issues. I will look at the issues to pull requests to see how much is there, and are there people actually getting their pull requests accepted, as well as I will choose like a few and look to see, oh, how are people handling this? So I'll look, okay, so this person is a contributor and this person's a member. And so it looks like a very positive process. There's no negative language. I'll look at a few, and then I'll check out the issues to see, is there something that looks valuable to me? That I might want to contribute if this is a project that I'm currently working on, or that I use that I want to contribute back to. People will use these tags to show different things. There's no one consistent way across different projects, but you can find help wanted, first timers, good first issue. Just know, if you go to a good first issue on any project and it doesn't look like it makes sense to you, that's not you having the problem. Many people don't understand how to write good first issues because it's an art. It's you have to think through it. And so that process, when you're looking at things, just because something is labeled that way doesn't mean it's actually true. So I have gone through a whirlwind of sort of how I process and filter out projects to figure out what I can contribute to. I hope this is helpful to you in your search for doing projects, and I look forward to seeing your pull requests and contributions and what you have to contribute to open source in this Hacktoberfest and on. Thank you so much.
Hello. So, hi, I'm Maria Telenchuk, and along with Lucy and Maud, I am one of the PyLadies Paris organizers. So, Hactoberfest. Well, it's all about contributing. And I hope that our speakers so far convinced you that it is a good thing to contribute in open source, and that you're all excited to start coding. But where to start? So today we have with us 4 maintainers of open source libraries who are going to tell you about their libraries and about the issues. So first we're going to have Bartosz Telenchuk, who is going to talk about SVG utils. Next, Mariana Meireles from Quantstack is going to talk about IP-Satoscape. Emmanuel Guillard from Saint-Gobain is going to tell you about scikit image and plotly library. So Joris van den Bosch is also with us tonight. He is not going to speak, but he is there on the Slack channel just in case you have any questions to him about pandas. Okay, so to you, Bartosz, are you ready?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Nice. I'm happy to introduce my project. to date. So the project I'm maintainer of, but actually there are many people who already contributed. But it's still kind of small projects. So I think there is kind of, it's interesting to also, when you didn't work with open source before, to start maybe with a smaller project, because there's fewer lines of code to understand. So the entry level might be a bit lower. It depends a bit on your taste, but I think this is something you might also consider. So I'm just going to present the SVG utils, which is the project I'm going to talk about. So SVG, what is SVG? SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. It's an open web standard by World Wide Web Consortium, and it's a graphics format. So you might have already seen it when you work, for example, with graphics in Inkscape or in Adobe Illustrator. So it's basically something in Inkscape you can draw things as you can do in Adobe. So it's a vector graphics, so it means that it's actually doesn't get degraded when you try to zoom in. So when you, for example, have a small S letter, when you try to zoom in on the S letter and you use JPEGs or GIFs or PNGs, it's a raster format, then you actually start seeing pixelated S. But when you zoom into a S in a graphics vector, in vector format, you see that it's still smooth. It always stays smooth. So it's pretty cool, especially for the web. So it's quite often used on the web. And actually, SVG inside is a kind of markup language, something very similar to HTML. And it's saved in a text format, in text file. And so when you open it, you see something like this, right? SVG heights and so on. So this piece of code actually here, you see that there are some tags, such as SVG, polygon. There are some attributes like height, width, points, and also style description. And so this line of code, it will produce this figure, this image that you see on the right. So everything about this color, the vertices is written in this format. So it's kind of easy to work with and it's easy to extend. If you want to see more examples like this and you want also to maybe change this example to see what happens, you can go to this web page or just Google for SVG examples and go to the link that you'll find there. And SVG utils is basically a tool to manipulate these kind of files in Python in an open, easy way. So it's an open source library with an MIT license, and you can get it from GitHub. And basically, it allows you to take SVG files, open it with Python, do some manipulations, rotations, translations. You can also have multiple files and combine them together. And the use case of SVG utils is basically to do this kind of transformations and, for example, to compose files together. So this is something which I started working with, and that's why I created SVG utils. I work with scientific publications, and I wanted to have a nicely composed images with multiple panels with A, B, C, D, E, and maybe some text somewhere. So I had to I had multiple files I had to combine together. I wanted to do it in a script in Python. So that's why I implemented SVG utils. Now you can do that very easily in this library. You can also transform SVG files, you can rotate, you can add annotations, or maybe you just want to create a new SVG file in Python from scratch using using basically Python language. And I just found out today that the SVG utils is used by over 100 projects on GitHub. I was rather surprised by this number. And so it kind of has already some community around it. And so if you want to contribute, you can just go to the GitHub SVG utils. You can read the tutorial. This is some documentation. You can read the tutorial to just find out how it works. You can read the README. There's a contributing guide. No code of conduct yet, but maybe you should add one. And also, if you can choose an issue from the open issues or just create a new one. And then you can make a pull request. If you haven't done pull request, you can ask me. I can guide you to the process. And so these are the few issues that are already added for you. So there are some good first issues with some descriptions about about them, mainly about improving documentation, adding some examples, adding maybe some kind of more graphical elements, or maybe also validation of the SVG files that we generate with the open standard tools. Thank you.
All right, so Mariana Meireles from QuantStack now is going to talk about IP-C2Escape.
Hi everyone, my name is Mariana Meireles. I'm a scientific software engineer working at QuantStack. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about IP-C2Escape, which is a graph visualization tool for the Jupyter ecosystem. So what IP-C2Escape brings? It's interactive, which means the user can interact directly with the graphs in real time. It has full communication between front end and back end. The way Jupyter works is that it has a front end written in JavaScript and a back end written in Python. And IP-C2Escape is able to communicate with the front and back end in real time. So you can listen to JavaScript events like click or mouse hover in the front end, and then send the signals to the back end and interact with it. And it's compatible with IP-Widgets, which is a bunch of tools that the Jupyter ecosystem makes available for you to create better user interfaces. So here I'm gonna give a simple example on the interaction of IP-C2Escape. Here we have this gray graph, and I decided that here I'm setting a style that's saying that every time I have highlighted in a edge class, my edges are going to be red, and every time I have highlighted in a node class, my nodes are going to be blue. And here I wrote this little function that adds highlighted to all of my edges, and I put it inside of this button. So when I click on this button, it's gonna activate this function, and it's gonna load in real time what I just wrote. And the same idea for nodes. Another example, here I have this graph. I'm gonna set the node spacing really far to 100, like here. And now I'm gonna create a slider, which is this is an example of a widget. And then I'm gonna set the slider for really close. So now the distance, the node spacing is 0. Increase. So these are some examples of what you can do. How to get IP-C2Escape? You can install it with Mamba, Conda, or pip. I really recommend you to do it with Conda or Mamba because it's easier to keep track of it. A quick code overview. So as I explained before, Jupyter is divided on the front end with JavaScript and the back end with Python. So here we have this widget.ts file, which works with all of the visualization of IP-C2Escape. So if you want to change something that's related to the front end, this is the file you have to edit. It's a TypeScript file. And here we have the cytoscape.py, which is about the backend. So here we have classes that work with the interaction of the dictionary, text classes that defines the graph, nodes and methods of removing nodes and removing or adding edges. So this is where you have to look for these things. So what's out there to help you? We have docs, we have examples, we have a GitHub, and we have a Gitter channel. I'm gonna make these slides available for you, so you can click these links. A bit about how to contribute in the community. First of all, the IP-C2Escape is a diverse and safe community, so we're ensured by the non-focus code of conduct. Contributions. You can open issues on the GitHub repository. If you find any problems, you can really help with documentation, adding examples to the docs or to our examples directory. You can, of course, also contribute to the code base, answering questions and spreading the word. Here's our docs. I just built it locally. As you can see, like this is the docs for our integration with Network X. So here you can see that we have like undirected graph, and then we have a snippet of code with an example, and here a directed graph, and here like some examples of interactions. So it's really useful for our users to have this kind of visualization. So it would be great if you could contribute with this kind of things. That's it.
All right, so thanks, Mariana. And now we're going to have Emmanuel Guillard from Saint-Gobain talking about scikit image and plotly.
Hi, PyLadies. Welcome to Hactoberfest. My name is Emmanuel Guillard. You can call me Emma. And I'm a maintainer of Plotly and scikit image. I'm going to present these two projects. Here you can see the documentation website of the Plotly library. Plotly is a data visualization and plotting library. It's web native, so it's written in JavaScript, but it has a Python API. It's used mostly from Python, especially in Jupyter notebooks. In Python, there is both a low-level and a high-level API. If you take a look at the documentation, you'll see that first, there are a lot of different traces, but also there is a strong focus on documentation with a lot of different examples. So hopefully you already know about Plotly. If you want to contribute, it's easier to contribute to a project you're already familiar with, or you'd like to get more familiar with a project. If you go to the Plotly GitHub, you'll see that there is a contributing guide, a file, contributing.md, explaining the different parts of the code, the organization of the documentation in particular. And in the issues tracker, we've labeled a few issues with Hactoberfest. They are a good starting point, and you can comment on these issues to launch the discussion. So this was for Plotly, and as for scikit image, here is the documentation website. Scikit image is an image processing toolkit for Python. It's a collection of algorithms or filters in order to transform image data into other images or to extract numerical data out of them. Once again, it's a bit easier to contribute to scikit image if you're already doing some image processing, or at least you would like to get more familiar with image processing. If you want to take a look at what scikit image is capable of, there is a gallery of examples with a lot of different examples of the different tasks you can do with scikit image. On the website, you also have the contributing notes, which are found here. And you have the corresponding file also on GitHub, but it's nicely formatted here. On the GitHub, so you have the contributing notes, but in the issues tracker, you also have this list of issues which we've labeled with Hactoberfest. And once again, it's a good starting point. So this was for the two projects, Plotly for data visualization and scikit image for image processing. I'm looking forward to talking about this project with you. I'll be on the PyLadies Slack. This is me, Emmanuel Guillard. And I'd like to thank the PyLadies organization for organizing a bit Hactoberfest so that people can talk with maintainers, and therefore you have the opportunity to make long-term valuable pull requests to projects like Plotly and scikit image. Please don't make pull requests which are just fixing a typo or changing one word. I'm sure you can do much better than that. And the downside of Hactoberfest is sometimes that projects are floated and we have only a small bandwidth. But thanks to the PyLadies Slack, we'll be able to talk together. And if you have questions about how to contribute, the process, what is expected, and so on. I try to help as much as possible, depending, of course, on my bandwidth, but I hope you'll be many people. So this was it for Plotly and Scikit-Image. I'm looking forward to seeing you on GitHub and on the Slack as well. So thank you very much, and enjoy this event.
All right, thanks, Emma, for introduction to Scikit-Image and Plotly. And it's really amazing. We have so many exciting issues to solve. And our maintainers will be there with us throughout October on Slack. So in case you have any questions, either about their libraries or GitHub or the first issues, don't hesitate. Just ask. We may not be able to answer you, but at least we'll try, and maybe we'll have some nice discussions. But if you still didn't get an idea on what first issue you would like to do, here's another idea. So perhaps you're already writing some programs and using some libraries, and either you like it very much, or maybe you see some issues with it, or you just want to join in. You can also do it. So I'll just quickly show you an example of pandas. Some of the speakers already did show you some of the repositories. So let's go together to GitHub. Pandas. All right. So the first thing you should look at in the library, you should look if there is any recommendations in the contribution. So here I clicked on the wiki, and if you scroll down, you can see the contributing, and there are some notes on how they want you to contribute. So some guidelines, and this is a good starting point to look at. And then here in this library, you can see there are lots of issues actually. And we already looked at issues together. We talked about Hactoberfest issues and also about the good first issues, but still I just wanted to show you quickly how we actually can filter out through them. So here we can just say label good first issue, and now you will see only good first issues, and they are usually the good starting point. But still, if any library interests you, as long as it's on GitHub and it's hosted on GitHub, it's valid. But why do I say valid? What does it count for? So let's go back to actual Hactoberfest. All right. So as you go into the webpage, the official webpage of Hactoberfest, the first thing you see is that you can actually get a T-shirt or plant a tree. That's a thing we actually didn't talk about throughout the whole event today. So how do you do that? You just have to make 4 valid pull requests in one of those repositories. And as Emma said, just be careful not to make any silly pull requests. Make something a really good contribution. And if you scroll down in this page, you can also see some Hacktoberfest project ideas. You can filter the language here, anything you want. Let's say we want Python. But also you can just go into the GitHub and filter out even more. So again, we can choose Python, and we want the open issue, and you get loads of ideas here. Okay, so I think we are pretty much done for today. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. We are on Slack throughout October. If you have any problems getting in, you can maybe just put it on YouTube channel and we try to help you. I just would like to also thank once again all the speakers. And so here there are quite lots of us all together, all the people involved in the organization, and also the Microsoft for helping us out. And of course to you for being here with us. Thanks a lot and happy contributing.